I'm breaking off the engagement with this poor girl from a single-parent home. At the engagement announcement, both my fiancé and I were stunned by these sudden words from my future mother-in-law. My mother was also there, furrowing her brow at my mother-in-law's words. While my future mother-in-law had always opposed our marriage and tried to prevent it in various ways, I never imagined she would humiliate us like this in front of so many people. It's unforgivable. Just as I reached my limit and was about to voice my opposition, my mother suddenly approached my mother-in-law with a frighteningly sweet smile. "Well then, I'll destroy your hospital." Everyone gasped in surprise at my mother's sudden declaration. The next moment, as everyone wondered what she meant, certain individuals arrived, and the room erupted into chaos. My name is Ulrika. I'm a 26-year-old office worker with a fiancé. His name is Troy, and we've been together since our student days. We met through my best friend's introduction. Her brother was the same age as Troy, and I often saw him when visiting her house. Troy was easygoing and brotherly, always considerate of others, and I was drawn to that side of him. When I conveyed my feelings to Troy, he showed a complicated expression. "I'm really not that great a guy. My family has been doctors for generations, and my parents are pressuring me to become a doctor too. In high school, I fought with my father about it every day. I kept fighting back, saying, 'Don't decide my future for me.' Troy had dreamed of becoming a pilot and fought with his father almost daily about it during his senior year of high school. His mother also completely rejected Troy's wishes, becoming hysterical and putting tremendous pressure on him. 'If you don't take over this hospital, who knows what I might do?' His mother ultimately bound Troy's future with what amounted to threats, forcing him to give up his dreams. People say things like, 'How nice to be from a doctor's family,' or 'Your future is secure,' but that's ridiculous. How many times have I cursed them in my mind, thinking, 'You have no idea what I'm going through to be here.' He must have been tired of being labeled as a good person and being called perfect by everyone." Seeing Troy's tired, weak smile, I couldn't leave him alone. "I'm that kind of man, so it's wasteful for you to admire me. There are plenty of better people out there, so you'd be happier with someone else." No. I could pretty much guess what he was going to say. So before he could finish, I expressed my feelings. "Your parents don't matter. I want to be with you." Even if it meant going through hardships with him, I was in love with him with that level of determination and feeling. That's why I didn't let Troy finish what he was saying. "Actually, I'm relieved. Troy, you always think about others' feelings and rarely express your own. I'm just glad to know you're human too." "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" As Troy chuckled, I gave him a loving smile. "No matter what flaws you might have, I've fallen in love with all of you, including those parts. I'm so happy you told me all this, even though you probably didn't want to talk about it. It makes me love you even more." Troy's eyes welled up with tears at my straightforward feelings. As he turned away to hide his crying face, I hugged him and directly conveyed my feelings. After hearing them, Troy accepted my confession. This is how Troy and I began our relationship. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and around when I turned 26, I discovered I was pregnant. Troy was so overjoyed he could barely contain himself. "Really? You're really pregnant?" Troy kept asking over and over. There was a reason he kept asking. When I graduated, Troy and I had informed both sets of parents about our relationship. Since we were considering marriage, we wanted their permission with the future in mind. However, while my parents were happy for us, Troy's parents strongly opposed our relationship. His mother even turned me away at the door the moment she saw me, telling me never to cross their threshold again. I absolutely oppose you dating this poor girl. How can we trust the daughter of such a delinquent woman? I've already decided that Troy's wife must be from a good family. My mother-in-law had attended the same high school as my mother. I was raised in a single-parent household, and my mother had no other family besides me. My mother lost her parents in an accident when she was young and was raised by relatives. She later married my father, but he passed away from a heart attack when I was small. My father had never been very healthy and had been warned by doctors to take care of his heart. My mother's life could be described in one word: intense. Both after and before marrying my father, it was almost too painful to hear about. Having no parents, she was bullied in school and felt lonely during events. She begged her relatives to let her attend a high school where she knew no one, and enrolled in a school in the neighboring state. Her relatives were strict, and for my mother who loved freedom, it was like hell. She said she felt suffocated. After escaping from that strict home environment and entering high school, my mother became rebellious and was quite notorious at school. My mother-in-law still held on to that impression of my mother from those days and assumed that I, her daughter, must also be a delinquent. She absolutely refused to accept my relationship with Troy. However, Troy wasn't the type to give up. He continued trying to persuade his mother until she finally agreed to at least let us date. No matter what mother says, she'll have to accept it once there's a grandchild. But is this okay? We're not even allowed to marry yet. Won't you face terrible consequences? I won't let that happen. If they try to do anything to you or our child, I'll cut ties with them. Even just getting permission to date had been so difficult. Getting permission to marry wouldn't be straightforward either, and we made many attempts to persuade his parents. However, there was no sign they would accept it. Troy, thoroughly fed up with his parents, chose to prioritize my pregnancy over his parents' opinions. I want you to understand that we're not using this child to get married. We've always wanted our own child. I know. I'm sure this child knows that too. Troy had confessed to me that if we couldn't persuade his parents by the time I turned 25, we would elope. Working as an obstetrician, he knew I wanted children and was mindful of my age, trying to act early. So Troy and I reported my pregnancy to his parents, but as expected, his mother went ballistic, and his father demanded we abort the child. We absolutely won't accept you having a child without our permission. This is absolutely ridiculous. Getting pregnant without parental permission, have you lost your mind? Think this over right now. As his parents spewed horrible words that I didn't want our child to hear, Troy sharply rebuked them. Don't misunderstand. We didn't come here for your permission, we came to inform you. If you reject this, I'll leave this house. I'll open my own clinic and make my own living. At Troy's declaration, his parents showed confusion. It would be very bad for them if Troy left the hospital. Recently, due to online reviews, patients have become more selective than ever about choosing hospitals. His parents had felt this impact, and before Troy's arrival, the hospital's reputation was terrible. His father was an internist but wouldn't listen to patients and gave superficial examinations. As for his mother, she was harsh with the nurses, and despite working as an obstetrician, she was severely criticized for not being sympathetic to pregnant women. Troy had turned this situation around. Upon arriving, he had immediately confronted his parents. He then reviewed everything in the hospital, renovated the dated interior, improved conditions for nurses with children, and even enhanced the hospital food. Above all, his dedication to giving each patient personal attention caused the hospital's reputation to soar. Thanks to this, their online reviews and local reputation improved dramatically, and now they have the largest number of obstetrics patients in the state. Because of Troy's results, his parents couldn't talk back to him anymore. Now this same Troy was talking about opening his own clinic. His parents must have realized how bad this would be. They tried to stop him, showing their panic. However, Troy wouldn't back down an inch. He insisted he would leave unless they accepted our marriage. His parents, finally yielding, reluctantly agreed to Troy's proposal. For now, they agreed to recognize me as his fiancé. Now that you're engaged, we must introduce you to the relatives. Let's have an engagement announcement during the Christmas holidays when everyone's gathered. That's how my mother-in-law welcomed me. At the time, I didn't realize she was plotting something. After that, busy days flew by, and before we knew it, the Christmas season arrived along with the day of the engagement announcement. That's when the incident occurred. For some reason, my mother-in-law had invited my mother too, so I met my mother at the station. My mother, whom I hadn't seen in a while, was as beautiful as ever. It was hard to believe she was the same age as my mother-in-law. She's a mother I'm proud of. Together with her, we headed to the meeting restaurant. It's been a while, Troy. Have you been well? It's good to see you, Mother. Thank you for making time in your busy work schedule. After my father passed away, my mother took over the business. Though she was often looked down upon for lacking education, my strong-willed mother overcame these adversities and now manages multiple companies. She's involved in various businesses and has been extremely busy lately. Today, she made time in her schedule at my insistence, allowing us to meet after so long. You're late. Everyone's waiting, so hurry up and come in. My mother-in-law angrily shouted, though we'd arrived slightly early. Troy looked puzzled at this, but my mother calmed him and urged him to go inside. I followed them in, but couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. I noticed something odd and spoke up. Troy and my mother must have noticed too. While all the relatives were already seated in the room, there were no seats prepared for me, my mother, and Troy. Now then, our guests of honor have arrived. Shall we have them give their greetings? Wait a minute. Our seats aren't prepared. Could this be a mistake in the restaurant's setup? Please check. Troy tried to stop my mother-in-law, who was trying to start the gathering without regard for us, but was shocked by her next words. Oh, there's no need for that. There are no seats for you simply because I didn't request any. What do you mean? As we showed our surprise at my mother-in-law's words, she smiled wickedly, and several nearby relatives chuckled along with her. It means exactly what I said, we haven't prepared any seats for you. We don't need people with such shallow thinking who would associate with a poor family in this house. As Troy showed his anger at his mother's spiteful words, his father jumped into the conversation. If you won't break up with that woman, I'll bring in a new doctor to replace you. And I'll have you banished from this industry. Don't be ridiculous. You can't do something like that. Of course we can. Have you forgotten what kind of family we are? We have influence in this industry, it would be easy to crush a newcomer. I couldn't understand these parents' nerve as they spoke so matter-of-factly. Troy had always supported them, yet they were trying to cast him aside. I couldn't believe their words. We've already talked to the medical association. Don't think you can make it on your own. I realized they intended to use their influence to prevent Troy's business from succeeding. Unbelievable. Not just his parents who were returning kindness with cruelty, but all the relatives laughing at this. Are they really human? As anger was welling up inside me and I was about to burst out with harsh words, my mother-in-law turned her gaze from Troy to me and spoke unbelievable words. "You're the one to blame for all this. Because of a poor person like you, Troy is suffering like this. If you understand, then remove yourself from Troy's life. I'm breaking off the engagement with this poor girl from a single-parent home." Hearing my mother-in-law's words, I was too shocked to speak. As I was genuinely feeling down, wondering if I was really the reason Troy was suffering like this, and my vision was about to blur with tears, my mother, who had been quietly listening until now, stepped in front of his parents with a frighteningly sweet smile and spoke surprising words. "Well then, I'll destroy your hospital." At my mother's sudden words, everyone, including me, showed surprised expressions. While everyone was dumbfounded, not understanding the meaning of my mother's words, only Troy let out a big sigh. That's why I tried to stop them. They're really such fools. Just as I was about to ask him what he meant, my mother looked outside the room and called to someone. Then, several unfamiliar elderly men entered the room. Unlike me, who didn't know who they were, all the relatives showed surprised expressions, and a stir ran through the room. The medical association directors? Why are they here? To everyone's shock, these were the very medical association members Troy's parents had mentioned earlier. As his parents and relatives showed confusion about what was happening, my mother exchanged pleasant greetings with the directors. The medical association members returned her greetings and conversed with her in a friendly manner. "What's going on? Mom, do you know these people? Know them? These gentlemen are both clients and shareholders of my company." It turned out my mother knew the medical association members through her work. As I heard the story, the medical association members supported my mother's business and many fully backed her. They had received a request from my mother regarding a new project and had come here in connection with that. We had already discussed this with Troy, but there are plans to clear that hospital site and build a medical building. We're just waiting for Troy's permission. As his parents let out shocked voices at this news they were hearing for the first time, Troy turned to face them with a wicked smile. That location is close to the station and surrounded by many kindergartens and elementary schools. Ulrika's mother runs support services for children who won't attend school and shut-ins. She asked me if we wanted to turn that place into a facility for medical care, free schools, and childcare support. As I heard later, my mother had taken notice of Troy's hospital's reputation. Although the evaluation had improved thanks to Troy, his parents were still dragging things down. Moreover, some of the nurses working there were acquaintances of my mother and often complained to her about his parents. "I heard about it, you know? Even though things got better after Troy came, you're still continuing your tyrannical guidance and examinations. You don't sympathize with patients or even try to listen to them. Plus, you only teach outdated childcare methods that don't match society's needs. Is there any need for such a maternity hospital?" When I discussed this with the medical association directors, they strongly agreed with me. Apparently, my mother had felt something was off about being invited to this gathering and had investigated various sources. She learned from nurses working at Troy's parents' hospital that his parents were plotting this incident. She also heard about this from medical association directors and made preparations in advance. The directors praised my mother's circumstances and work ethic, so they immediately agreed with her proposal. They quickly offered to help with the medical building development. Moreover, his parents' bad reputation had spread even within the medical association, and they were honestly fed up with them too. However, they also highly valued Troy, so they offered substantial support on the condition that he would be brought into the medical building project. Hearing this, Troy decided to give his parents one last chance. He told my mother that if his parents truly accepted me and acknowledged our coming child, he wouldn't accept the offer. He would continue working at his parents' clinic as before. That's why he attended this gathering. What a shame. That was your precious son's last act of kindness. What a waste. Well, I suppose people who can so easily betray others' feelings will lose the trust of their nurses and see their patients decrease. How does it feel to face retribution from the poor woman you've been looking down on? My mother provoked my mother-in-law with a full smile. She must have been holding back her anger too. It would be one thing if they had only insulted her, but they had disrespected her daughter and future grandchild too. It's natural for a parent to be angry. Actually, I later thanked her for enduring this long. It's really a shame you wasted Troy's kindness like this. But I suppose it can't be helped. You chose the path of oppressing him yourselves, so you brought this upon yourselves. Give up on both him and the hospital. Everyone was shocked by these revelations. While my mother-in-law twisted her face in frustration at my mother's intense provocation, my father-in-law showed panic upon learning that the medical association, whom they thought were their allies, had betrayed them and sided with my mother. After all, they were about to have their hospital destroyed and their work taken away. It's natural that they would panic. Realizing this, my mother-in-law also understood their livelihood was in danger and frantically clung to Troy. If there was such an important matter, why didn't you tell us earlier? If the medical association directors are saying such things, you could have consulted with us. We've worked hard together to get this far, haven't we? We'll apologize for everything, so please reconsider. What are you misunderstanding? Troy twisted his face in puzzlement at their misguided thinking. Their selfish behavior must have pushed his anger to its peak. Troy's expression was filled with more fury than I'd ever seen before. How can you think you still have a chance? This was your last chance. You've already lost it. If you understand, give up and get away from me. You're annoying. No. Although my mother-in-law had said terrible things to Troy, she was about to cry just from receiving harsh words from him. Normally one might feel sorry for her, but given everything that had happened, I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. So, Troy. Since the directors are here, shall we hear your answer? Will you accept the building project? Of course. It's good for the local children, and most importantly, I can build a life with Ulrika and our family. Ulrika will get to spend more time with you too, so I gladly accept. The medical building was designed to include residential space, and my mother had carefully planned the design so we could live there. Many other families would be involved with the building, and my mother had been meticulous in the design to make it easier for them to work there. Then let us come too. It would be hard for you alone, right? It will take time to arrange new staff, but if you bring our employees, you can save on recruitment costs. Troy's parents were trying desperately to cling to him. Seeing their persistence becoming unbearable, Troy looked fed up. My mother, noticing this, stepped between Troy and his parents and decisively cut them off with a full smile. I'm sorry, but our building already has excellent doctors coming from the medical association, so we don't need incompetent doctors. Who are you calling incompetent? Who else but you? As his parents made an arrogant response, my mother delivered harsh words with a bright smile. When this irritated my mother-in-law and she snapped back, my mother dropped her smile and responded in a cold voice. You're incompetent at your jobs, tyrannical toward your staff, and as doctors, you can't even sympathize with patients. You're finished as human beings before even being doctors. My mother, who had been speaking politely until now, started speaking in a harsh tone like from her past, making everyone in the room flinch as they looked at her. "You've been calling us poor and whatnot, but we earn more than you do. Whether you're stuck on your image of me from high school or whatever, stop saying nonsense and causing trouble for our family. I won't let my daughter go to a house with a mother-in-law like you. I've already discussed it with Troy, and he's going to come to our side." Ulrika had mentioned this possibility before too. "What did you say?" Shocked by this revelation, his parents looked to Troy for confirmation. Noticing this, Troy pulled out a marriage registration form from his pocket and showed it to his parents. "Are you really going to leave us?" Troy. Wait. If Troy leaves, our hospital will go out of business, I guess. Well, you're both getting old anyway, so why don't you quietly retire? No other hospital would hire you anyway. At Troy's casual words, his parents showed signs of panic. They probably thought Troy would quietly return to them and break up with me if they threatened to kick him out of the house. Now that such schemes had been shattered, his parents were distraught and begging Troy to reconsider. However, such things wouldn't change Troy's mind, and he shook off their clutching hands. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any mercy left for you. The land rights and ownership are all in my name now. There's nothing you can do about it. So give up and try to live off your savings. You should be fine living just the two of you." His ice-cold tone made his parents' spines freeze. However, they couldn't give up here or their hospital would really be destroyed. His mother desperately continued speaking. "What about the nurses? What will you do if we're sued for suddenly bringing this up? How will you take responsibility?" His mother tried desperately to hold on to Troy. Although she tried to threaten him, this was within expectations. Troy smiled as if mocking them and stated his prepared answer. "Don't worry. I'm taking all the nurses to the medical building too. When I told them we could redistribute your salary portions to them, they all happily agreed. We won't stand for such tyranny. We'll sue. Go ahead and sue if you can. In return, we'll sue you for all the tyrannical acts you've committed against the nurses." Perhaps because they were aware of their unfair treatment of the nurses, his parents were at a loss for words after hearing my mother's statement. Seeing this overwhelmingly disadvantageous situation, none of the relatives tried to help them. Rather, everyone seemed to be thinking only of protecting themselves. This was natural. Before them stood famous directors from the medical association. No one would want to risk their own necks by opposing them. His parents, who had suddenly become isolated, turned pale and broke into a cold sweat. "So that's why we'll be closing down that hospital. We'll take responsibility for the nurses at our place." Wait a minute. As his parents tried desperately to cling on, Troy delivered his final words. However, they wouldn't accept his words, and for some reason, his mother started clinging to me instead. "Ulrika, please. Say something to him. At this rate, we won't be able to maintain our lifestyle. At our age, there's no way we could work at another hospital, and if we lose that place, we'll have nowhere to live. You couldn't do something so cruel as to leave us destitute, could you? Please, persuade Troy. We'll apologize for our past rudeness. They would even use me if it meant saving themselves." Something snapped inside me at their behavior. I shook off their clinging hands and gave them a cold look. "What nonsense are you talking about? There's no way I would persuade Troy. You plotted to break off our engagement and thoroughly insulted my mother too. This is the natural result for people who can't even treasure their own employees. You brought this upon yourselves. You should reflect on your evil deeds. They probably thought they would be forgiven if they cried. There's no such easy solution. I'm not alone anymore. Now that I have something to protect, I won't yield so easily to such things. As a mother and as Troy's future wife, I added harsh words of punishment without wavering at his parents' tears. I will never forgive what you have done. Even after our child is born, I won't let you meet them, and I have absolutely no intention of helping you with this matter. If you understand, never show your faces to us again. Honestly, just seeing your faces was stressful. I, who had never opposed them at all until now, spoke clearly. My mother-in-law must have lost her temper in an instant. She tried to grab me, but Troy, sensing danger, stepped in to help me. Afterward, his parents continued to spout unsightly words and make violent statements toward us, but ultimately the medical association director's voice settled the situation. Thanks to this, I emerged unscathed, and his parents' schemes came to nothing. Thus, thanks to my mother and Troy, we successfully cut ties with his parents. As Troy declared, his parents' hospital was closed. As planned, a new medical building was constructed there. As for his parents afterward, they apparently tried to seek employment at other hospitals, but online reviews had a major impact, and no one would hire them. As a result, they even took out new loans to open a hospital, but with their bad reputation, no patients came to them, and they went out of business in less than 6 months. All that remained with them was heavy debt and disgrace, and they fell into poverty. Please, help us. At this rate, we won't even have money for tomorrow's food. They came crying to Troy several times saying such things, but Troy turned them away at the door. His mother tried to contact me too, but I completely ignored her and reported it to the police. A restraining order was issued against them. Thanks to this, we haven't seen his parents at all since then. This is because afterward, they had a falling out with the relatives too. Although the relatives had initially sided with his parents, thanks to the medical association directors who put their foot down, they didn't interfere with the new project. In the end, they didn't help his parents, and his parents had a huge fight with the relatives. There were ugly arguments with accusations of betrayal, and the two became estranged from their relatives. His parents became completely isolated, and now apparently no one even mentions their names anymore. Since then, we've been living peaceful days. After moving the hospital to the medical building, Troy has been busy. Even patients who had become distant due to his parents' presence returned to him after hearing about the move to the medical building. Rumors spread that, if you're having a baby, it should be at Troy's hospital, and now patients come from far away too. The nurses work enthusiastically, and the atmosphere of his hospital has transformed into a bright one. Between us, our son was safely born and is loved by the nurses too. I never thought I'd get to see my grandchild's face. I'm truly happy that you found such a wonderful husband. My mother's kindness, saying such things with a smile, was reflected even in the house's design. The house my mother designed is fully barrier-free and has considerations for children's safety throughout the walls and doors. When this building was being built, I could strongly feel how much my mother was thinking about us. That's my line. Thank you for raising me alone all this time. Now it's my turn to repay that kindness. I'm really glad to be your daughter. Oh, stop, you're making me cry. My mother smiles happily with tears in her eyes while holding my son. While watching my mother's smile, I savored our happiness and gently stroked the head of my son sleeping peacefully in my mother's arms. No matter what hardships might await, I'm sure I can overcome them as long as I have my mother and Troy. Like my mother, I vowed to protect this child who was born with my life. Making such a pledge, I smiled together with my mother as we watched my son.